The night began like any other. Quiet streets, porch lights dimmed, the hum of distant traffic dying out as the small town of Rathglynn, Antrim, fell into its habitual calm. Then, just after 3 a.m., that stillness shattered, the air filled with a violent crackling, followed by a sound that neighbors would later describe as like an explosion inside a house. Within minutes, flames were devouring the front of a terraced home. The fire burned hot and fast, a roar that turned the still air into something feral. Emergency calls began flooding into Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service at around 3:20 a.m. Residents, woken by smoke and screams, ran into the street. Some were barefoot, some clutching phones, all staring as a home they'd passed 1,000 times became a furnace. The house, one of a modest row typical of Rathglynn's older estates, was swallowed in orange. What no one could see from the street was the terror inside. A woman in her 70s trapped as the temperature rose beyond endurance. Neighbors didn't wait for sirens. 2 local residents, a man and a woman in their 40s, ran toward the blaze, shouting her name through the smoke. They kicked at the back door, tried to break a latch swollen by heat. The air burned their throats. Visibility collapsed into black haze. They managed to reach her, barely conscious, disoriented, and pulled her toward the threshold. Firefighters arrived seconds later, dragging hoses and forcing their way through the doorway that was already caving in. By 4 a.m., the inferno had gutted the house. When firefighters finally subdued the last flames, the building stood half collapsed, windows blown out, furniture reduced to ash and twisted metal. The smell of scorched timber lingered long after sunrise. Paramedics treated 3 people at the scene, the woman in her 70s and the 2 who had tried to save her. All 3 were taken to hospital. The pensioner sustained burns to her hands and smoke inhalation. Both rescuers suffered smoke inhalation, and 1 sustained burns to their hands and arms. Against the odds, everyone survived. From the start, detectives from the Police Service of Northern Ireland treated the blaze not as an accident, but as arson with intent to endanger life. Investigators and forensic officers cordoned off the site before dawn, photographing burn patterns, testing residues, and interviewing witnesses. Fire experts traced the seat of the blaze to a lower room near the front of the property, an area that showed clear signs of accelerant use. By the next afternoon, the once quiet housing street looked like a war zone. Charred curtains hung like flags of surrender from shattered windows. The brickwork was blackened, the roof partially collapsed. Police tape fluttered in the cold breeze. Locals gathered quietly, shaken. News crews arrived before noon, capturing what remained. A front door hanging off its hinges, fragments of furniture scattered like bones. Neighbors described the woman as a pillar of the community, known for her calm presence and kindness. She had lived there for decades, they said, and was rarely seen without a friendly wave or short chat. That her home had been targeted seemed inconceivable. She didn't deserve this. No one does, one neighbor told the BBC. By evening, the tone of official statements hardened. PSNI officers issued an appeal for witnesses, dash cam, or CCTV footage from the Rathglynn area between 2:30 a.m. and 3:30 a.m. They urged anyone with even minor details to come forward, emphasizing that arson with intent to endanger life was among the most serious charges in Northern Irish criminal law. Politicians and community leaders visited the site over the following days. Antrim's deputy mayor called the act despicable, saying it had rocked the sense of safety in the community. Residents echoed that feeling. The idea that someone could set fire to a house while its occupants slept disturbed something deep and instinctive, a fear older than electricity or locks. That home, the most private of spaces, could become a trap. The investigation moved quickly. Detectives reviewed local CCTV and doorbell camera footage, cross-referenced vehicle movements, and began interviewing individuals connected to the area. Within days, a man was arrested on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life. PSNI confirmed the arrest publicly and later charged the suspect, who appeared in Antrim Magistrates Court. Court documents revealed further details. Prosecutors alleged that the fire had been deliberately set in the early hours using an accelerant, with the clear potential to cause loss of life. The accused ultimately pleaded guilty, and months later, an Antrim Crown Court received a custodial sentence. That conviction, widely covered by Irish news and newsletter, Co-UK, gave the event a grim finality. The court's ruling confirmed what investigators had suspected from the first hour, that this was not an accident of faulty wiring or careless heat. It was intentional. The official photographs presented in court captured the brutality of that intention. Interiors reduced to skeletal frames, plaster curled away like burned skin, rooms turned into shadowed caverns of soot. A lifetime of objects, chairs, teacups, family photos, turned into anonymous debris. The damage estimate ran into tens of thousands of pounds, but the loss measured in emotional terms was incalculable. In the weeks following the incident, Rathglynn became a town of watchfulness. Neighbors started informal night patrols, checking on elderly residents, installing doorbell cameras, double-locking doors. The council arranged emergency accommodation for the victim, while charities helped with clothes, medication, and food. Community fundraisers sprang up almost immediately. A reflex of solidarity in a place suddenly reminded how fragile security can be. For local fire crews, the incident left its own mark. Firefighters who had entered the structure described conditions that were near flashover, meaning temperatures close to those at which entire rooms ignite simultaneously. The team's official statement praised the courage of the civilian rescuers whose actions, they said, almost certainly saved a life before their arrival. Arson, fire officers later explained, leaves psychological damage beyond the visible scars. Even after repairs, victims often experience insomnia, hypervigilance, or the sensory echo of smoke long gone. For older residents, those effects can last years. This case was no exception. By summer, the site had been cleared, but scorch marks still stained the pavement. Children walking to school slowed down at that stretch, staring silently at the vacant plot. Adults, too, avoided the subject, speaking of that night only indirectly. Trauma in small towns is rarely loud. It seeps into routines, quiet conversations, and glances that avoid the horizon. Local newspapers followed the story through the judicial process. When sentencing finally came, coverage emphasized accountability. The judge's remarks were stern. Arson with intent to endanger life, he said, strikes at the heart of community safety, and demanded deterrent punishment. For many, that verdict provided a kind of moral closure, not the return of what was lost, but a recognition that society had taken the horror seriously. In retrospect, this single act of violence illuminated how intertwined a community really is. The emergency call operators, the neighbors who ran into danger, the firefighters, the detectives, the court staff, each formed a chain that began in chaos and ended in order. Every statement, every arrest, every news update built a bridge back toward normalcy. The Antrim arson horror, as headlines dubbed it, has since become a cautionary case study for local safety campaigns. PSNI and fire services jointly launched renewed awareness drives, urging residents to maintain smoke alarms, register vulnerable neighbors for safety checks, and report suspicious activity promptly. The incident reinforced the reality that even in peaceful towns, vigilance is not paranoia, it's protection. Today, the woman who survived lives under the quiet care of family and friends. Her recovery, though steady, remains shaped by memory. The sound of the flames, the heat against her skin, the hands that pulled her through smoke. She has spoken only briefly through intermediaries, expressing gratitude to those who risked themselves to save her life. The house that once stood there has not yet been rebuilt. Its absence is part of the landscape now, a reminder etched into daily life. For Rathglynn, the story's lesson is sobering but enduring. Safety is communal, not individual. Every fire leaves two marks, one visible, one invisible. The first can be repaired with timber and plaster. The second takes far longer to fade. The Antrim blaze of April 2024 proved both truths. If stories like this remind you how thin the line between safety and tragedy can be, stay informed, stay prepared, and stay connected to your community. And if you follow real-world cases where ordinary nights turn into moments of horror, subscribe for more verified true crime breakdowns and factual investigative stories that reveal what really happened when the lights went out.